morning, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. I'm actually not as tired as I usually am in the morning. I mean, I went to sleep relatively early, which is surprising considering how much I've been trying to get through Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. I finished episode 2 last night. Got through all of episode 1. I started at the beginning because, when I think of Lego Star Wars, what I think of is, when I think of Lego Star Wars, I think of the OG game from back in, 2005, 2004. And because of that, I'm like, I want to start there and then move forward, and it is a very different game. But we'll talk about that as I move through more of the game. It's pretty fun. I'm enjoying it. It's long, and there's a lot of walking around, and the levels are really short. But if this is the start of how Lego games are going to be from here on out, I think we're in for some good things. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're here to talk about the Girl from Plainville. The Lego Star Wars I'll probably have finished. Not finished, but I don't know why I keep thinking it's Monday. Thankfully it's not. What's I'm looking for here? Lego, maybe next week it'll be. Maybe next week, and then after that, I will eventually get back into Koromon and finish that game out and get a little bit more time with it before I do a review of it. Because I played the demo and I bought the game, but that will be coming soon too, at a date TBD. So what else have we got? We are here to talk about the Girl from Plainville, episode 6. Plainville. I keep saying Plainview, but I mean Plainville. The Girl from Plainville, episode 6, which is a continuation of the story with Michelle Carter, who enticed her boyfriend into committing suicide. Now, because of how slow the criminal justice system works, we're starting to get into a bit of an issue where the flashbacks take place too far back from modern day, and it can get confusing. Initially, I was a little confused by Michelle going into the rehab program. I was thinking that was intended to be the quote-unquote present being when she's on trial, but I don't think that's I think it's meant to be, it is meant to be in a flashback, because it's not, I was confused about that until she gets out of the facility and is talking to Coco. And then at that point, it all kind of made sense and was clear. But before that, it's it just could have been just shoddy editing that, made it, appear that it was the past when it really wasn't the past. What else was there? There was now, and the thing is too, it's this idea that when you're watching the show kind of, I don't want to say it, it does a good job, I think, of putting the blame equally on the parents of Coco. Look, they didn't tell him to get back in the car and sit there, but it did a good job of, putting him into the mindset where suicide was a viable option for him. And I think that that's an important part of a show like this, is to be okay, so here is what this, I had, you can see what led to this, and then because there were no interventions, and in fact negative interventions, it led to the unfortunate outcome. I'm just confused about how a conviction could have happened the way they lay the law out on the show. Because as the show lays it out, enticing someone to kill themselves isn't illegal in Massachusetts. Well, that's not to say that what Michelle did was right, or anything like that, but what is right and what you are legally culpable for are two very different things in a lot of cases. It's a question of, is every law moral and all of that. The idea that, watching the show, I'm just like, look, what she did is deranged, it's messed up, it's, everything that they did is not, is just not good in any sense of the word. The problem is the standard of legal culpability as they establish it is that enticing someone to kill themselves is not illegal, or assisting someone with suicide is not illegal. So I'm not sure how she got convicted of manslaughter. Maybe the next episode will explain it a little bit better. But they don't, here they don't do that. They don't do that here. I'm driving past the Walgreens, that's a LabCorp in it, and I'm like, it just reminds me of that other show with Walgreens wants to put the Theranos in it. But look, there's the I think that's a fundamental problem that this show isn't addressing, is the question of how is she legally responsible for what happens if the law is what it is. Unless they're just not explaining the law right, but if the way they explain the law is correct, I don't know how she could have gotten convicted. It has to be the law isn't as they're portraying it. And then it's maybe it was the fact that she had blatant disregard for his life that makes it, that made it manslaughter. Maybe it was the fact that the reason why she was doing it. That's the thing. It's it probably is if someone is the way the law is, it's probably if someone is dying and you assist them with suicide, then that's not a crime. But if someone could have been saved, especially in the case where he is, and the texts indicate that he was reaching out to someone for help, it's kind of he's reaching out on a life, he's drowning, he's reaching out for a life preserver, and then rather than throwing him a life preserver, she threw him an anchor. If that's the case, and that's what, and that's the way the law is, the show should really do a better job of illustrating that. Have the district attorneys explain, the difference, between, assisting suicide in legal cases and assisting suicide illegally. Because that's a pretty big part of this story that isn't quite being addressed. What else is there to address with this show? I'm trying to think. Bringing the friends to the stand is interesting because it does kind of show her mental state a little bit, and why she is the way she is. What leads her to do what she does is a pretty big part of, the show. That exploration is important. And I think that, while the flashbacks don't show here what what her reason is for doing it, it's laid out pretty damningly. And I think the point of it is, too, it's she is so far, I don't want to say up her own ass, but so far into her own delusion of reality. Because she's so deeply, deeply, deeply in that, she doesn't see the repercussions of her actions as anything like that. The prosecution lays out a case that she, she was doing it for attention. She led him to suicide for the positive attention that would come from his death in her friend group. Or her not quite friend group as it's laid out in this episode, where it's like, no, we weren't really friends with her. We just kind of hung out a few times because she was begging for us to hang out with her. And it's like the idea that she is telling the story, and it's like, you know, her version of reality is so warped from what the real world is. They probably should have gone with an insanity plea. Would have been the smart thing. I mean, or like, you know, there are so many things they should have, like, that should have been explored. Like, basically all of last episode could have been an exploration in the legal strategy going into the case. Because I feel like that's a big part of this that isn't properly explained as we get to this point in the story. And it's not like the legal strategy is unimportant in a case, because, like, they need to line up, okay, so here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to take this case on, here's how we're going to fight this, you know, this charge, or in the case of the prosecution, here's how we're going to bring this about. I mean, in the first episode, or the second episode, whatever episode they first introduced Aya Cashin, in that episode, they talk about how it's like, this is a groundbreaking case. Like, this case is there, and they've never tried a case like this before. And because they've never tried a case like this before, they were trying something entirely new. And to be like, okay, well, you know, we have to, you know, like to not explore further how they're going to set up the case, feels like a missed opportunity, unless, like, I think there's one more episode left, unless this final episode does show what's going on in a more real sense. It feels like a wasted episode, that last episode before this one. Because this one, there's a lot of miscommunication, and not miscommunication, but, like, a lot of the not giving us the full story, and I don't think that's for a creative reason, although we won't know until next week. Like, until we see the next episode, we won't know if the rationale for them not telling us everything was to keep us obfuscated for you know, to make the final episode better, or to keep it off, you know, to keep it confused going into that point. It just kind of seems silly to me, which I know I say a lot, to put it like that. What else was there with this episode? I don't know, I think that, like, especially considering the turn that the Flash, I still like the way they do the conversations, where it's, you know, it's the two of them talking to each other, like, physically in person, when it's text messages, and I think that's an interesting way of doing it, rather than doing like, if they made people read subtitles. I think that that's part of it, is that because texting is such a major part of this, where other shows get around texting with, like, you know, oh, we're just going to show, like, what's it called? We're just going to show the text on the screen because it's a one-off or a one and done. They kind of can't do that here. So they are going to, They are going to, they do need to do it this way. But it does add to, you know, explaining her delusion, the fact that they can see. Like, the fact that they're talking to each other physically. What else was there? I feel like that might be it with this episode. It was a pretty... I mean, look, the trial has started, and the fact that the trial starting is an uneventful part of the episode, with one episode before the finale, or one episode, and that is the finale, feels like a miscommunication. And not a miscommunication, but it's an unforced error on their part. To be like, look, we don't really need to, you know, show any of this. It's not important. I feel like there's a lot that goes into it, into this episode that really doesn't need to be there. Like, it feels like a second run on the script would have solved a lot of the problems with this, and I don't mean to be that person, but, like, I feel like, I don't think changing the script would have changed the issue. I feel like what they would have needed to do was, completely restructure the focus of the show. Because as the show stands, the focus on their relationship taking up as much screen time as it does, I don't think it helps at this point. Like, if they truncated that part and then moved it to there, and then did alternating subplots during the trial, that would have been more interesting. But I think right now what's ending up happening is you're shortchanging A, the trial, and B, the impact of the parents in the present. Because we keep seeing things like, her, like, I don't think we need to see as much of their relationship blooming, because I think that at this point, by the time you reach the episode before this one, that has already been established. And it has been well established and well set up, and we don't need to sit here and be like, okay, so, how close are these two? Like, it feels more like a studio note. It's like, I don't think we've really driven this home yet. It's like, well, no, you have. Like, it has been driven home ad nauseum at this point. You don't need to do it further just to add in, just to manufacture additional, things like that. I think that enough is done up until that point. Now, hopefully the finale kind of gets a little bit more into the legal issues, actually dealing with the legal question, because, again, it's like, this is a true crime story. And the true crime in this case is, they make a point of pointing out that it's groundbreaking when they bring the charges. And that is done multiple times over, where it's like, this has never been done before. this is a major point, in the question of free speech. It's a major point in the question of, the law as it stands regarding assisted suicide, or, whatever they call it on the show. But, that's not explored. It's not explored. And the idea, and the thing is, too, it's like, they're making Michelle to be the bad guy, but I think, at the same time, they're making it where it's like, there are viewers who can watch this show the way it's laid out and draw the incorrect conclusion that, oh, Michelle, did the right thing by guiding him in that way. I mean, and that is if you were doing a show about a girl who was convicted of murder for enticing someone to kill themselves, then you are majorly messed up if you get to the point where you're near the finale and it's like, well, it could, there's a case to be made that probably should have done it. And it's like, well, no. What? No. It is mildly infuriating that that's the point that we're kind of at here on this show, where it's like I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, so, there is someone who's going to watch it and be like, well, what did Michelle do wrong? And on that note, we'll be back tomorrow with Moon Knight. And Thursday evening, which is tomorrow evening, we have The Northman. And after The Northman is, what's the other one we have coming? The Northman, and then, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Maybe Duel, too. Who knows? So until then, have a great rest of your week.